Hey guys, spoilers for the Book of Boba Fett. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Script Department. I'm joined again by Brad to discuss episodes 2 and 3 of the Book of Boba Fett. Before we get into that, if you haven't already, check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all the kind of cool projects that we're getting up to there with our global network of screenwriters. Also, check out our social media profiles. Just hit the links in the description. And if you haven't already, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search for the Script Department. So, Brad, episodes 2 and 3 of Book of Boba Fett, we're going to kind of group these together because for me, it does feel like a very coherent, connected set of episodes. I think episode 1, 2, and 3 are almost like their own standalone, complete chapter of Boba Fett's journey. And particularly when you watch episode 4 then and kind of see the direction that it kind of moves in there a little bit. But we'll concentrate on episodes 2 and 3. What were your kind of overall general thoughts of watching this, particularly in light of episode 1?
Well, it's really interesting you say that 1, 2, and 3 are like quite joined up, because it's almost like they're 3 acts, particularly with episode 2 being a lot longer than the first 2, and it is almost like a movie when you put the 3 together. I really enjoyed seeing more of the Sand People, particularly in episode 2. You know, there's a whole story about the ancestral claim to a homeland, and you know, it immediately can feel heartbreaking when you sort of understand the plight of a people, especially when there's an invasion by a technologically advanced sort of society, or a number of them. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was sort of showed a lot of Boba's journey a lot more of his journey between the Rancor and the Mandalorian. And we learned a lot more about it, and we also learned a lot more about Tatooine as well. I mean, there was so many things that we found out that we didn't know before. And then into episode 3, we sort of spread a bit more into life in Mos Espa, and the sort of this, I guess, like a power vacuum that's been created there, with everyone trying to get a piece of the throne, or if not the throne themselves. And there's a massive Wookiee as well, which is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, Chrysanthemum. I think if you ever watch Star Wars Explained, they do a great video about Chrysanthemum. And is that his name, Chrysanthemum?
Chrysanthemum, yeah.
Yeah. And it's his relationship with Boba Fett in the past, which was quite interesting. I don't know if it's canon or not, but it was quite cool to see that. Yeah, there's some. I really enjoyed episode 2 and 3. Episode 2 in particular felt very much like this could be its own Star Wars story movie. It was very Last Samurai. It was very very much that kind of living among the locals, or living among the this other culture and immersing yourself into this culture and understanding it in a way that you've never been shown before. I mean, when you think about the first time we meet the Sand People in A New Hope, they are depicted as these just kind of scavengers and savages. And it's the very one-dimensional approach of the other, isn't it? It's they live here with us, but they're different from me, therefore they're villainous in this, or they're dangerous, or they're people to be afraid of, or whatever. And this episode, I think, was more effective at humanizing and making them a 3-dimensional culture, community, however you want to describe it, than most Star Wars films have been able to do with other tribes and cultures and communities that they're trying to explore in those movies. I feel this does a much better job of establishing the day-to-day life of somebody who lives in the desert on Tatooine than the Han Solo movie did of exploring the black market and the underworld, the criminal underworld, and all that kind of stuff. It was.
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between TV and film as well. That in TV, you do have a little bit more space for, like, it's not that there's nothing happening, but it's not all action. So you can see the people living in the desert. Whereas if it was in a film, it would be a massive black spot, and people are, what is happening here? Why are we just watching them? How they go to the toilet in the desert or whatever it is they're doing. And it's there's a thing about TV where you can really explore these cultures, and I think they've really gone for that. They've sort of shown that they've got that space to do this, and it's really worked.
Yeah, it is one thing that Mandalorian and Boba Fett Mandalorian did really well, and Boba Fett is doing really well now. They're making great use of the medium and the long form storytelling vehicle
Mm.
that they've got in front of them, which is really strong. Yeah, so I really enjoyed episode 2. I thought I was taking on a real hell of a journey on that episode, and then episode 3, I think was a fun episode, but I find it hard to differentiate what happened in both of them, and so I'm going to be relying on you to kind of do that, kind of specify those details, just because I to me they just blur together, and that's not because it's badly written or anything, but just simply it does feel like to be continued, but not because there's
Yes.
some big cliffhanger or anything like that. Just we just ran out of time, so we're just going to continue it next week or whatever. That's kind of what it feels like. It didn't feel like this episode needed to be these two episodes needed to be broken up for me. I don't know if you agree
Mm.
with that, but that was
I
my
don't know.
experience.
It felt like there was a definite. I felt there was a difference between the two. That of course they carried on, and there was so many sort of setups and foreshadowing in episode 2 that then played out in episode 3.
Mm.
Like the assassination attempt by Chrysanthemum, and the sort of the revenge that was the revenge of the biker gang on the Sand People, and they set all these things up and they play it out in the next episode. And of course, that's how TV episodes work, but not necessarily all so immediately. So it was like quite a quick payoff for those sort of things. Like they put the giant, huge Wookiee in there with a massive gun, and it was almost like Chekhov's Wookiee. That guy was gonna come back at some point and try and kill him. And it is it is one thing. You're right, but I found there was a definite split between the two tonally. The first episode I watched it with my wife, and she's quite a big crier, but not for things like Star Wars. And she was crying at, I'm sure she won't mind me saying, or she might do, I don't know. But she was crying at the plight of the Sand People, like, because the way they've shown the struggle, and how they get slaughtered. And when I saw Sand People get slaughtered in the films, I'm like, oh, there's another one gone. There'll be plenty more where they came from, kind of thing. Quite almost callously as a audience member. But in this, I was like, oh no, they've killed another. Oh, they've killed their bantha. Just knowing what it means for them to lose one of the tribe, like, it's a huge loss. It's not like a stormtrooper where they'll just like get another one out, or they'll get another clone out for the Clone Wars. It's not that. Like, they have a finite resource of manpower, and it's evident they're going to struggle when they start losing people.
So just to recap the story, I'll recap them as the flashback thread and then the present day thread very, very quickly, and then we can kind of unpack them a little bit more then as we go through them. But so we ended episode 1 in the past. Boba Fett he's proven himself to the tribe, and they have offered him water, which was, as we talked about in the last episode, I thought that was such a really kind of powerful moment or gesture. Now this episode kind of shows him being trained up by the Sand People, trained to fight. There's one Tusken in particular that's training him, and gets him, beats him down, but then he gets back up again, and there's a kind of a mutual respect there across the board. The leader is watching, keeping a close eye, and then there's an attack from this biker gang who are, I think they're either trafficking water or spice. I forgot which one it is. I know the spice trade does play a big role in it later, but they're they're using the land, and they're not really getting permission. They're just slaughtering the Sand People as they pass through. And so Boba Fett then trains them to fight back and use speeders and stuff like that, and embrace a little bit of technology to just level the playing field a little bit. They hijack a train, and then they have their victory, and I think they capture some of the Pike leaders who are like
Mm.
these fish people, I guess, and maybe that's why they're interested in the water. I don't
They're
know.
pretty handy with a blaster as well, and that they're they're not, again, they're not stormtroopers either. They're taking quite a few people out. They're quite
Yeah,
accurate.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it is a bit of a bloodbath, yeah, in terms
Mm.
of loss of life across the board, and yeah, and then in episode 3, then there is a kind of that revenge. The bikers get their revenge on Slaughter the tribe, and Boba Fett finds himself alone then, wandering the desert. The present day story then is more simple. It's really just he's trying to continue to try and earn the respect of the town, or make his presence felt, and then they challenge the mayor for sending the assassins. In episode 1, the mayor says something along the lines of, we're not the only ones, or
Mm.
did he deny sending the assassins, or did he say we're not the only ones? Kind of.
He actually gives him a bounty because he says, "Well, they're not allowed to operate here. Well done for killing them." And he gives him a bounty, doesn't he? And then Boba says, "Okay, I'm going to take this money, but this is the tribute you didn't pay me back in episode 1."
Yeah, yeah.
And you see, I don't know how is an Ithorian. I don't know how their facial expressions necessarily work, but he looks a bit peeved, maybe.
Yeah.
But he's there's a lot of cat and mouse going on in that scene.
And as he's leaving, then he's approached by 2 huts, which is brilliant. I loved it. I geeked out so much. It's these young huts, Jabba's cousins, apparently, and they're brilliantly presented. There's this kind of slow drum kind of music, kind of to kind of announce their fanfare. They're sitting on this giant kind of board that's being carried by like a group of, I don't know, servants or whatever, and
they're struggling as well.
They're really
it's
struggling.
Heavy.
I mean, just imagine carrying 2 Jabbas on your on your shoulders, and it's just really absurd and bizarre looking. If anybody just walked into a room having never watched Star Wars before, they think, "What the hell is this?" But it's so brilliantly done, and they're accompanied by the scariest Wookiee you will ever see in your life, Chrysanthemum, who looks like he could crush Chewbacca's head with one hand. He's
enormous. He's like
he's
a hench Wookiee. He's enormous.
Yeah, he is. If you saw him in a video game, he would be the guy, the bullet sponge that requires the rocket launcher to take down. He is insanely massive and brilliantly designed. Just a quick note on him. He, at the end of each episode when they show the artwork, the artwork sometimes looks better than what you actually get in the movies. Like, they'll show you an action sequence, they'll show you the conceptual art, and you think, we didn't really get that. We got something that felt a little, maybe not as exciting as what that image presented. Sometimes this was a case where the concept artwork for Chrysanthemum is much lesser than what we get. Like, what they actually delivered is so much better than that concept artwork. If you go and look at the 2 side by side, it's incredible the way they realized. Somebody gave them this concept artwork and said, "Okay, you got to come up with the costume and the look and all that." And whoever did that nailed it. I mean, to the point where
he's terrifying. Like, it's the striking. Blue, he's got blue eyes, isn't it? The striking like eyes and just everything about him. He's angry as well, and it's like, you don't want to get on the wrong side of an angry.
And you're right.
Wookiee. It is.
It is all in the eyes.
Yeah. He's pretty terrifying, and I mean the twins are brilliant. Like, all the little touches about them. That the fact that she's got a fan and she sort of talks to him behind the fan, and you don't really hear her, and then he says, "Oh, my sister says blah 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 blah," and there's this weird relationship between them, and there's a callback to, I think, Jabba eats a little thing running around on his throne in Return of the Jedi, and the brother has got a little thing in like a little pot, and I'm like, "Oh, he's going to eat it. He's going to eat it," and he doesn't. He uses it to like pat his neck there. It's alive. I don't know why it's alive. Why doesn't he just have a sponge or something? But he's like drying himself down. I know. Oh, he's going to eat it now, and he doesn't. He just puts it back in the thing.
It
And then when he
is.
pops up later, he's still got it. It's like his little sweat towel or something.
There's so much. There's so much thought went into the presentation of those characters on that scene, and the presentation of Chrysanthemum, and like you said, Chekhov's Wookiee. I mean, it's just brilliantly done, that scene, and it's basically the Jabba's cousins are saying we have claim over over this region. You know, sleep lightly, bounty hunter, whatever they say, and they leave, and that's it. And it's very straightforward. And then beginning of or early episode 3 or mid episode 3, I think they are, the Wookiee returns and tries to kill Boba Fett while he's in the back to tank. Boba Fett has luckily recruited a group of an unemployed gang, I guess, or a group of kind of cyberpunk-esque augmented people who are kind of half machine, half human. They've kind of augmented, like, for example, their limbs, or replaced a limb with a robotic one, or that kind of thing. And they ride around on these Vespas, and they are Vespas. I'm sorry, like I live in Italy. They are absolutely Vespa scooters with the wheels removed, and they just kind of hover around. And it looks very. It was kind of cool, but it also felt. I was like, where'd you get the money for these? Because
I think the choice of having them all of those like primary and bright solid colors, it's a bit Power Rangery somehow. I'm like, what? Like, they've spent all this money on like their ocular implants and like their bionic limbs and stuff, and it's like, why would they look okay, they look pretty badass, and then you look at the bikes and it's like they're on little brightly colored Vespers. I don't get it. That felt a bit of a weird choice for me. I don't know. I don't know how they ended up there or who advised them on that, but like, why are they on these weird bright coloured bikes?
It was a bit strange, but that group comes to the rescue, and they capture Chrysanthemum. They lock him in the Rancor, the empty Rancor pit, which they make a point in episode 2 to kind of remind you is empty. And next day, Jabba's cousins come back, this time around the back entrance of the palace, and they've said, hey, look, we're really sorry for... And I want to talk about this scene later, like when we get back into it a little bit, or we can talk about it now, but this scene I found very strange, because it's not the end of them, but they basically say, okay, well, we're sorry for that, and no hard feelings. Here's a Rancor pet for you guys. No point in that chamber being empty.
Which is great. The Rancor turns up, and it's got Danny Trejo. It's obviously Robert Rodriguez. You're like, he has got Danny Trejo in this. Brilliant.
Danny Trejo is the Rancor kind of trainer.
Yes.
And, yeah, really cool. And Boba Fett releases Chrysanthemum and says, look, here, take your Wookiee. And they say, we don't want him anymore. And so rather than killing him, he just lets him go and says, look, don't work for these kind anymore. And that's the end of it. And to me, that is, I'm trying to think, is there, the Pikes land in the nearby city, or they land in some spaceport, and it's like, right, war is coming. Like, they're coming back. I think Boba Fett threatens the one of the Pike leaders or whatever in the region, which I think the flashback series is going to tying into that, because obviously we had the Pikes in the flashback and the Pikes in the present day. So obviously that seems to be the main thread that's linking those two story arcs together.
I thought it was a bit of a weird choice to have. I know there'll be a reason for it, and we'll learn more about that as the episodes go on. But to have the Pikes as the mysterious third party, because when the twins come to the back door and give them the Rancor and go, "Sorry, we're off. See you soon," they go back to Hutter, and they've got no interest because they're worried about a mysterious other syndicate who lays claim to the throne. But we've already met them. Like 2 or 3 times in flashback, granted, but we've already met them 2 or 3 times. And then when they land and they get off at the spaceport and it's them, it's like, oh, it's just those guys. It's those guys that they've robbed the train, and it's kind of I felt that was a weird choice, particularly because for them 5 years has passed, or so, maybe 4 years, but for us it's immediate. It's like it's not those guys from 5 years ago. It's the guys from 5 minutes ago. So I think that was quite an interesting choice to have, to reveal the Pikes, or have revealed the Pikes already in the flashback, and then have them as present them as the antagonist force in Mos Espa, or even on the whole of Tatooine. We don't really know the scale of it yet. But I thought that was quite weird.
Yeah, it did feel there was some strange like I think the flashbacks thread, the Boba Fett becoming part of the Sand People, fighting, helping them fight to protect their land and so on. I thought all of that was great. I didn't really question any of that. I just thought this is really strong. And the more I saw that, the more I thought this is what that show should be. It should just be this. It should just be like Boba Fett learning to, like I said in the first episode, do away with the armor. Be more than just a costume, a cool costume. Because that is why we love Boba Fett up until this point. There is no real character, until they started giving him character in Clone Wars and so on, and like the comics and so on. But for a long time, Boba Fett was just an action figure in a toy store. It was a Halloween costume. It was just that cool guy with a rocket pack. And a ship where you have to kind of lie down in the ship or whatever. It was just a very intriguing, cool kind of what's under the mask kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of putting so much energy. I was thrown by it in episode 1, but by episode 2 I was like, yeah, I'm all in for this whole flashback thread. I'm all in for who's the man under the mask. I don't think we're really getting that in the present day thread. The kind of gangster criminal underworld head of the crime families thread that they're developing. It feels like this is a different story. And yeah, you're absolutely right. When they're bringing in these big villains that you overpowered so effectively in the flashbacks, it's hard for me to take it seriously. We were talking about Many Saints of Newark last week, and the idea of, like, I've always found The Sopranos a very intimidating show. Like they're an intimidating group of people. You don't want to get on the wrong side of those guys. And you could probably hang out with them for an hour or so, but at a certain point you're either in or you're out with those guys, right? And there are a few characters in particular that are very, very, like, and Goodfellas as well and stuff like that. And if I never feel except for people like Chrysanthemum or the Hutts, that Boba Fett is on the back foot. And I feel you need to give me a bigger example of him on the back foot, other than I'm not as fast as I used to be, which they kind of show in the first episode. I know I'm kind of waffling here, but the Pikes is the one thing that has thrown me as well, as you said.
It's kind of like if you didn't know anything about Star Wars and you almost put the prequel trilogy and the original films together, and you were watching them at the same time. So there was 2 timelines as we were watching here. And it'd be like when the Emperor pops up, you're like, oh, that's that Senator Palpatine guy in a hood. Look, that's that guy. And it wouldn't work. I know that you sort of know who they are as the prequel trilogy starts, but that doesn't matter because you're not watching both timelines at the same time. There has been a reveal. You know that information, and then you watch the other film. Whereas watching both of these timelines at the same time, I think it definitely blew the antagonist reveal, because we'd already met them. We'd already met them in 2 or 3 different ways, either on the train in the heist, which is amazing, or in their sort of base in Mos Eisley, which is nice to see Mos Eisley again. And it that fell flat for me. I'm sure they're going to go somewhere with it because they're not going to have these enormous ships arriving. I don't think they're their ships though, the Pike ships. I think they're just arriving on
Yeah,
transports as far
yeah,
as I can
yeah,
tell
yeah.
because there's loads of people getting up. But they're flowing into the spaceports in one way, shape, or form, and it's like they're not going to do all this foreshadowing if it's not going to be a big thing.
It. I was thinking the whole time. I was like, okay, what? See, one of the things I really loved in Solo was the reveal of Darth Maul at the end.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool, such a cool kind of just, okay. And I hadn't watched Clone Wars at that time, so I didn't. I knew that Maul had come back and all that, but I wasn't really aware of the Crimson Dawn. Is it?
Yes.
And I was like, okay, this is good. And then Kira, the character from Solo, kind of steps up and becomes kind of a leader in that group. And I was thinking she's obviously the big bad in this.
Yeah.
Because you gotta bring, like, the thing with Star Wars, you gotta bring somebody back. I mean, we know that Hayden Christensen is going to be a part of Obi-Wan. We know that, there's been lots of characters have shown their faces in Mandalorian. I keep wondering, right, when's the big character going to show up? And I was thinking, it would blow people away, I think, if you had a Han Solo appearance, because you kind of feel like there's unresolved.
Yeah.
There's that kind of we've got unresolved issues here. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen. I haven't heard anybody make a reference to that. I don't think
Well,
that's
I
going
don't
to
know
happen.
I don't know how they do it. Like, would it be whether they're going to do the make Harrison Ford look young as they've done in Mandalorian because they've already laid the ground for that, or I mean, it was a little bit less successful with Solo, but I mean, I guess they could bring in Alden Ehrenreich instead. But it's whether I don't think that would be a fan favorite to do that. I think it would be a lot more
Yeah,
appreciated to put Harrison Ford in and make him young,
but
which they might do.
I don't believe that it would. But I was thinking, wouldn't it just be amazing if that was their big, in the same way that Mandalorian pulled a few strings, and kind of blew people away a little bit, even if in hindsight the execution wasn't totally amazing, but it blew people away in that moment. And I think it wouldn't be totally unprecedented, let's say, but I don't think it's going to happen. What I would love to see is Kira, for example, and give greater credibility to like an older Kira. You could cast
Mm.
anybody in that role, and it could be a
Yeah.
really cool casting choice as well that would make us go, wow, okay. And this is a story of older characters, in a franchise dominated by younger heroes. This is a story with older characters, and imagine an older Kira as well coming into the fray. The idea that it's, we had the Hutts, we've had the Mayor, we've had the Pikes. Now you can't give us any more twists about who the bad guy is. That's the problem.
Mm. Yeah.
That as much as I would love for it to be Kira or any other kind of high profile villain in Star Wars, you can't really do that. They may do that, but you can't really do that from a screenwriting point of view, because you've already played so many hands of,
Yeah, I
who
think there's
sent you?
one.
It was the Mayor. Who sent you? It was the Mayor. Who? Okay, but I'm not the only one. The Hutts. Oh, look, the Hutts are there, and then it's, but the Hutts are leaving because somebody bigger is coming, and the Pikes now. If the Pikes turn around and say, "Yeah, but we're working for somebody else," or we're being bankrolled by somebody else. It's
Well, they
like,
do
come on, where
kind
does
of
this
say
end?
that. They do touch on that because they don't necessarily say it's somebody else or whether it's just Pikes higher up the food chain, but they do say, "Oh, we're not allowed. Our managers have said we're not allowed to give you protection because there's already someone who's laid claim to that land, and we're paying them protection." And it's like they do have. There is someone telling them what to do, whether it's just more Pikes or someone else. I think there is a. They've left that open to whether there could be another layer.
And I would welcome a better villain, but I think at that point you were moving into the Last Jedi territory, where, or that sequel, that series,
Mm.
that the territory of that series where the big bad wasn't really focused enough.
Mm.
You know, where it kind of chopped and changed as and when, you know. Kylo Ren is the big baddie, and actually he's working for somebody else, and that person turns out, you know, and it's just where do you draw a line on this stuff? So
Mm.
there is a clumsiness, I think, that to the antagonistic qualities of this show. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and what I loved about Mandalorian was they moved, you know, there was always other antagonists. There was always loads of antagonists around the place, but they were space hopping around from planet to planet. So it was totally understandable. You can't be everywhere. But this guy is
Mm.
literally, you know where this guy lives. You've sent a guy to kill him. Like
Yeah.
this should be a very focused, clear, a much more focused, clearer narrative than what we're getting, I think.
Which to your point, the flashback narrative is cleaner
Mm,
because it's characters, it's the hero's redemption in a way. It's the transformation of Boba into a more honorable sort of leader in a way, and he wins the trust of the Sand People, which is a huge thing. I mean, we've only ever seen them attack people in the past, like, and he sort of seems to understand that immediately, that he needs to win their trust, and he wants to, and I think he almost becomes a little bit messianic to them. How they're, he's standing there with his arms out like this as they're wrapping up in his cool black cloak. How we met him in the Mandalorian, and he becomes something else to them. He becomes sort of like a guiding force, and then I love the fact that his influence is almost certainly responsible for the downfall of the Sand People, because is it episode 3 we see them slaughtered, and it's before they do the heist in episode 2. He steals the speeder bikes from the biker gang, and they're also the people who are getting protection money for that area. So they're building this idea that you've messed with them twice or three times now, and you absolutely beat the crap out of them in that like tavern. It was like Terminator 2. He just
yeah.
walked in there, threw them through a few windows, and then drove off with their bikes. And it was, surprised they didn't take their boots as well. And it was that, it's that kind of they'd laid the groundwork for this, and then they kill them all. They kill
Yeah.
all of the Sand People, and he arrives, and he's obviously devastated because they're his family on Tatooine, and he has to burn them. But it's potentially, you could see it as his fault. Like they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
living
yeah.
a life. They were living a life without technology in the Dune Sea, as they call it, which is very Dune-like. Like, it's very very Arrakis-like. He's been training with them, and it's very, there's a lot of Dune in there, and he's pushed them to go further. He's taught them how to use technology. He's provided them with technology. He's tried to get them a better deal with the local syndicate and get them money, and then they're dead. And it's like they weren't ready for that. He felt like he pushed them too far. He was trying to make their lives better and stop the struggle, but they weren't made for that world. And I think there's part of his character arc and this evolution that he's gone through is going to be because he got this society. I mean, I'm sure there's more Tusken Raiders on Tatooine, but he got this entire tribe slaughtered by trying to bring them into the modern world and trying to bring them into his world.
And making deals and paying.
Exactly.
There's
He's the Boba that does that.
Yeah, he creates
Yeah,
there's a toll now and all that kind of stuff, and
yeah.
he he started to think like a gangster. He said, "Look, guys, let's start thinking like gangsters,"
Mm.
and they get killed for playing gangsters. And it's
Yeah, I mean, they just don't. I don't think they have the strategy almost to defend from that, because they're not of that world. They're not of that world, and he'll have a huge amount of regret for getting these people killed who took him in and made him one of their family. It was a huge honor that they did that, and he pushed them too far, and I think that's going to be a huge sort of hook in his development and his hero's journey, and why he's now honorable instead of, you know, scalping money and freezing people in carbonite and that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
definitely you can start to see. You know, I said in our first discussion, my biggest issue or the thing that I found so hard to kind of wrap my head around was why does he want this life as a crime boss? I found I really struggled to come up with that that through line or that kind of rationale, but I'm
Mm.
starting to see it more because of the kind of stuff you've described, where yeah, this is a guy um who does feel like yeah he's tried to make a change, he's tried to do some good, it's backfired,
Mm.
but he's kind of all in now, isn't he? And at some point down the line he's going to have to, there's a problem that he's not going to be able to ignore in this
Yes.
community, in this world, and it does feel like I'm going to have to try and get control of this whole thing so that other tribes and stuff don't get slaughtered as well, you know.
Mm.
um Maybe if I'm the most feared person on the planet, maybe they you know, they won't touch the people who are closest to me anymore. I don't know. There's I can start to see the clues. I can start to see the evidence
Mm.
for where where this storytelling is coming from.
Mm.
I have to say the like what you were saying earlier. You know, there is a real emotional connection to the Sand People now. I don't think I will
Yes.
ever look at them the same way again. I think I will look at them as so much more evolved society than what we were presented with. And actually, Favreau and Rodriguez and all them do such a great job of building up these people and this culture as something that is really like sacred to this world,
Mm.
and it's so brilliantly done. And it makes me realize that this is the magic that Favreau brings to Star Wars, whereas George Lucas saw just a bounty hunter with a kind of an alternate stormtrooper costume on him, you know, paint him gray and green or whatever, and leave
Mm.
it at that. Favreau sees a whole TV series, whereas Lucas saw they're just locals in this out in the desert who are there to be just to make it unsafe to go out into the desert, as if the desert wasn't already dangerous enough. Favreau
Yeah.
says, "No, we can do The Last Samurai with this. We can do, you know, Dances with Wolves and all these other types of stories
Mm. Well,
with
I
this
just think,
culture."
you know, it is that whole First Nations, Native American approach. I mean, they even do the and again, it's massively cliche on a cultural level, but they do the whole Vision Quest journey for him to become a member of the tribe, and it's this huge it's this huge thing that he has to do, like to go and wander in the desert to find a tree branch to make a club, and he's in a dream. He's in a sort of like a high sort of journeying meditative state the whole time, and that's this really. It seems really important to the people, but they do still bring humor into it. I mean, I was physically guffawing at the moment they bring out the lizard for him, and they're in a sweat lodgy kind of thing with a little fire, and I'm thinking immediately seeing it, I'm like, oh, he's going to go on some sort of vision quest now. This is it. This is the vision quest scene. But he obviously doesn't know that, because they bring in the lizard and go, he will guide you. And Boba's like, oh, it's a lizard, cool, he will guide me. And he obviously just thinks it's a pet or something, and then they flick spice in his face, and the lizard just launches through his nasal cavity into his mouth, and he's sort of like, oh, and he swallows it, and then he's still not up to speed. What's happening? He's like, I'm sorry, I swallowed it. Slippery little bugger. And I'm like, I was just in tears. I was like, it's not a pet. Like, what? It was so funny, and he, like, Timur Morrison brings so much of himself to the character in moments like this. You know, slippery little bugger, and when he's trying to teach them how to um, ride the speeders, and he's like, it's like a panther. You know, you can see this real. He's bringing so much more character to Boba Fett, and he's bringing some of himself, and you can see there's a humor in him that's quite deadpan, but it's funny, and even in these really serious moments of honor, like he can still bring that. But I at that moment I was in tears, and he goes out and he does the vision quest, and he comes back with his tree branch, and they make the club out of it, and they build it together, and they've really got this focus on the Tusken Raiders culture and what it means to them, and they've retrieved, it's a dead branch, but it's still a branch of something living from a dead sea of sand. And there's a lot of symbolism in them turning that into the thing that now protects him. And it's really interesting that how they've sort of immediately just created all this mythology of the Sand People. For someone who's only seen the films and spin-off TV series, you might have very, very little information on them, and then all of a sudden so much about them, and it's like, oh my goodness, they do have, as he says, they have ancestral claim to the sands. It's theirs. They've been there for a long time.
They're arguably the strongest characters in the entire Star Wars universe. Because think about it, right? And this was where, the minute I saw the he's going to go on a vision quest, I thought, oh, okay. Because it's cliche. But the thing I loved about it, when I found out, like, he comes back with a branch, I thought, this is the best vision quest I've ever seen. Or, the one with the best kind of, I guess, conceit behind it. You live on a desert planet where the seas dried up thousands of years ago, and your job is to now find me a tree and bring me back a branch. Like, that is just insane. What an insanely difficult quest to do. And the lizard will guide you, because the lizard knows the sand, knows where the water is, because the lizard wouldn't have survived if the lizard didn't know where the water was. So the lizard will guide you to that was my reading of it, that you need this living creature to help you, that you need this, right? So then when he comes back with the branch and they make the staff, and I'm like, oh, brilliant, that's where it all comes from now. I'm thinking, that means every single member of that tribe and every potential Tusken Raider has gone on that same quest, and there can't be that many trees out there. So you're looking at the best of the best of the best. They're the people they're the people who become part of that tribe.
It's like the proving ground, isn't it? To prove you can be a real member of the tribe, productive member of the tribe.
But it's not like, when I think about 300, for example, where the kids get sent out at a young age and they have to, kill a wolf or something like that and come back. I'm thinking, okay, but there's probably like thousands of wolves out there, and I'm not saying it's easy to do any of that, but the opportunities to prove yourself are in abundance. How many trees are out there? How many trees, like, strong enough, like, with a strong enough branch like that, are out there waiting for you to find? There can't be
just
that
one.
many.
Could just be one. There's not many branches left on it now.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. But either way, this means that there is like an exceptionally high standard needed to join their ranks, and it is a shame that they get picked off so quickly. But that also speaks to their kind of, as you said, their unreadiness to survive in an advanced age.
And before we move on from the dream,
sorry, just what does it say about Boba Fett now? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, his whole character has just been elevated to a whole new standard. Sorry, anyway, that was my point.
Yeah, I think it is. It's that it's really sowing in the seeds of this journey is going on, because, like we said earlier, because it's TV, you've got the time to show this, so you can really. I mean, by the time you get to the end of this season, I'm guessing you will understand his story, and you'll be dying for a second season, which is how a lot of shows like this, even if they're expensive ones, are designed. There's limited series are getting less and less because the franchises are where all the money is, really. But the dream state where he goes on the journey, you see all these visions of him breaking free from the Rancor and breaking free from a tree.
Mm.
that's surrounding him, which is obviously the tree that he's gone to find. But there's this huge moment where he breaks free, and that feels like this is the shackles of who he used to be that he's dropping, and it's part of this state. But if you think about what's happening in the dream, it's a dream inside of a dream, because we're already in a flashback,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then he's flashing back again. It's like, oh, hang, yeah, okay, he's now, but is he imagining the dream while he's in the back to tank? He must be like, so
yeah.
he's dreaming. He's going with, it's quite an interesting concept when you sort of step back. You're like, oh right, it is a dream within a dream.
I've been thinking about the kind of the work that they've been doing, or the kind of seeds that are sowing, and the kind of groundwork they're laying, and so on. You know, you and I used to watch wrestling.
Mm,
I'm a big professional wrestling fan, and one of the big things about wrestling is you've got to, if you want to build a star, you've got to give them what's called the rub. You've got to get a bigger star in there, and if they can beat that guy, then, or that person, then they've obviously got some ability. And to me, it feels like they're giving Boba Fett the rub, because this
mm,
is a guy who we associate as clumsy, fall into the Sarlacc pit, underwhelming, whatever. And then we've now got to make sure that this guy, you respect the hell out of this guy, because you need to believe he's a credible leader for this region as well, if he's going to be a gangster, if he's going to be a head of a crime family. So,
mm,
so there needs to be this whole, everybody needs to know the legend of Boba Fett, and not just the guy who fell into the Sarlacc pit. But in order to give him the rub, you've got to make the Sand People bigger than they were, because they, I think, up to that point, weren't really given all that much kind of respect by the storytellers and all that, in Star Wars.
yes, yeah. It's
And
the
so,
wrestling analogy is interesting because there's also the heel to hero
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah,
development that they always, even The Rock was a heel at one point, and
yeah.
Austin was a heel. They do that whole thing. So yeah, the wrestling analogy is quite an interesting one.
They're building up. It's almost like, in order to build up this guy, we need to build up this whole culture
Mm,
to then make him look better, and the fact that he's now earned the right to be in them, he's now
mm,
earned the right to be, and it's like they're spinning lots of plates, which I think a lot of screenwriters would struggle to do well. It's not
mm,
just we're telling several stories, it's we're actually having to get audience members to recalibrate their entire thinking when it comes to the Sand People,
mm,
and in turn get you to completely recalibrate the way you think about Boba Fett, so that you can then understand and appreciate what he's now going to do in the present, in the present day kind of storyline, where he's walking around in his costume.
Well, there's that redemption thread to it, and the phoenix from the flame, literally the
mm,
phoenix from the
mm,
flames, or the
mm.
Sarlacc pit, the phoenix from the. I don't know if that's a saying, but it should be. It's they've changed his archetype from villain to, and sort of anti-hero. Then they're just going to make him a hero. He's just going to be an honorable gunslinger. That's, you can see where he's going, and you can see what they're trying to do with him. That he's trying to do good, and he's clashing with himself, he's clashing with his past self, he's clashing with who he wants to be, he's clashing with Shand more and more. Like, she's still questioning him more and more. She's like, enjoy in Ep 3, I think she's like, enjoy the spoils. You've caught the Wookiee. He's in the pit right now, and he's not enjoying it. He wants to do the right thing, and he wants to send a message, and he wants it to be. And you can tell she's a bit like, in my head she's eating a chicken leg or something, but I don't think she was. But it's that kind of scene where she's like, oh God, come on, just enjoy the spoils for a little bit. And you can see that he's struggling with that. He doesn't want to be that, even though that's the role he stepped into. He's, as you said, he's probably doing it for very different reasons.
We've talked a lot about episode 2, just simply because I think episode 2 feels like it's the strongest of those 2 episodes for
Mm.
me. It's also the longest, 58 minutes, which is, although a good chunk of that is probably credits, because those credits are quite long.
Oh yeah.
Can I just say as well that I loved the Mandalorian theme music. and I didn't think they could top that. And the first time I heard the Boba Fett one, I thought, it feels like it's Mandalorian, but it's not quite as good. And now I just think it is so superior.
It's great.
I love it. I love every single thing about it. Sometimes when I'm driving my car, I have that playing, and I feel like I'm Boba Fett. You know, it's just awesome. The Mandalorian theme song doesn't make you feel like you're the Mandalorian. It just is a great theme song for a Star Wars show. This makes me feel like I'm Boba Fett.
Have you put any fairing on it to make it look like Slave One, or have you...
I kind of put the seat way back, so I kind of drive like
I think it's great. Like that it's not a choral chanting, but just the rhythmic chanting at the start. It's very brief, but it's just so effective.
It feels like it's Maori influence, I think, is it?
Yes, I think there's a tribal influence on it, I believe, and obviously Tamora Morrison being Maori, and he brings so much of himself to the character. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't an influence on the theme tune.
I love that. I love the allowing the, and at the end of episode 2, they do a kind of a tribal dance almost, don't they? When he's fully member of the tribe, and they kind of stand at it, kind of, it's almost like they're pretending to kind of clash staffs, but it's kind of a rhythmic kind of motion as well, and it felt very inspired by Maori traditions. I'm not an expert on that culture, but it felt, you can feel that Tamara Morrison has had a hand in helping shape the flow of this story, the characters, the way it's the way it just is overall kind of presented to audiences. Episode 3, generally, obviously we've covered a lot of it anyway, but was there any other kind of standouts for you in episode 3? The introduction of augmented people, not something we'd seen much of, if I'm correct, in Star Wars. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of mention?
So I thought it was great that we got to go back to Mos Eisley. So when he rides that bantha into town to talk to the Pikes, he doesn't go to Mos Espa, he goes to Mos Eisley. And when you get there are Pikes with stormtroopers helmets on, and you're oh yeah, the Empire has fallen. And that's a story that runs through The Mandalorian, not all the time, but it's still there, like the remnants of the Empire. And is it Moff Gideon? The how he's trying to do something, dark arts somewhere along the way to bring it back, and there's a thread of them, the remnants of the Empire trying to survive. Here on the front lines of the Republic now, you see the literal remnants of it. You see the walls are broken down. There would have been some sort of skirmish when they took out the stormtroopers, so there would have been an uprising of civilians on the planet. And I was like, oh, that's quite an interesting thing through this one scene, because the rebels wouldn't have gone planet to planet wiping them all out, particularly like Tatooine. I mean, there's not necessarily any tactical advantage from having that planet, really. I mean, it's a trading port, so potentially it would be important to them for getting things moving around the galaxy. But you see this, and in the background, I don't know if you saw the what's her name? I've got it written down.
The woman from Mandalorian.
Pelimotto, from Mandalorian, the mechanic with her little her droids. I was like, oh yes, because she's great. Yeah. She's who doesn't love Grogu? But she really loves it. She really loves that baby Yoda, and I love that character. She's great, and she's just for her to pop up. Maybe that's it, but Favreau likes to do little Easter eggs and then just let them fizzle, and then maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But I think she's going to be in it.
It's connecting the dots. It's keeping all of these shows under that kind of family of storytellers. It's reminding you that anything can happen in this show, and it's not that. It's also reminding you, I think, that this is happening at the same time as Mandalorian. As Mandalorian season
Mhm.
3, let's say.
Yes.
When Mandalorian season 3 comes out, it'll probably be happening at the same time as the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes, I think
Maybe
so.
maybe there'll be some interesting kind of a crossover kind of moments happening, like maybe an event happens in Mandalorian that that helps give sense to something that's happening in this or whatever. But
Yeah.
it definitely was a very useful thing to remind us of where we are in the Star Wars timeline, because I think it's very easy to forget when and how all of this is happening.
Yes.
And the stormtroopers helmets, all that kind of stuff helps you kind of just place where this is, particularly in a show that jumps back and forth in time.
And
So
I think they're putting a lot of time in filling in blanks, like almost legendary blanks, or giving us information about legendary events that we might not have understood. So the culture of the Sand People, the escape from the Sarlacc pit, and now Episode 3 gives us it gives us some Rancor action. And I think in Return of the Jedi, when Luke kills that Rancor with the door, the trainer runs out and he's crying.
yeah,
And a lot of people were like, well, why is he crying? Of course, it's his Rancor, but he was really emotionally destroyed by that. It's not just a beast; it was his beast. It's his pet, and this fills in a bit more of that story. So Danny Trejo's explaining, it's quite expositionally, but he's explaining that Rancors are actually really loving beasts, and they only attack when they're cornered. So to have a Rancor in the Rancor pit, it's always cornered. It is going to kill everything. But this is his Rancor, and he explains that it will imprint on the first person, and he's petting this enormous Rancor with like huge teeth, and he loves it as well. He evidently loves a big animal, Boba, and you can see there's going to be something interesting. And not to use the phrase too much, but we also get Chekhov's Rancor
you beat me to it.
because he's going to ride it. He's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
ride it. He's like, I want to ride it, and he's going. It will take a tremendous amount of concentration and guts, and you're like, yeah, we know he's got that because we've seen him claw his way out of a Rancor and then claw his way out the desert. He's going to ride that thing, and it would be great if it was this season. It might not be, but it'd be good to see more of Danny Trejo as the trainer. Like he seems really good in that role. I'm like, I'm into this. I get him as the trainer, and when he says the Rancor's depressed, which is why he's not moving around, he's imprinted on Boba, and then Boba has to leave, and he sort of whispers, "Don't worry, he'll be back," kind of thing. And it's like, oh, there's going to be a nice rapport
and
between the three of them.
and Danny Trejo doesn't do roles that don't have lots of action in them. And
Yes,
so that he's not just good with a Rancor, he's probably good with a gun. And he'll probably be another, if there is a big showdown down the line, kind of all the allies and all that coming together, Chrysanthemum will probably be there. The Rancor will be there. And
yes.
that Trejo will probably pick up a gun as well and be like, don't touch my Rancor,
No, he's gonna have a
Yeah.
machete,
Yeah,
evidently.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I think it's they're putting together a really cool collection of real badass characters
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would
yeah.
give any Jedi army pause for thought.
Well, when he releases Chrysanthemum as well, he sort of he gives him a bit of advice from a former bounty hunter to a current one, and he goes, "Don't work for scug holes.
Yeah,
It's not worth it." And then he sort of runs off. I was like, he's going to be back.
yeah,
Like,
no, absolutely.
yeah,
And yeah, we can talk more about him actually in the next episode. I do think it's worth mentioning. I can't remember where I read it, and I cannot find the article for the life of me, so apologies. But there was this really interesting article that I read this week about the importance of that augmentation element, where people are augmented in this story, to use their terms. Where maybe replacing a limb with a robotic limb or something like that, and how it actually changes the way that it removes the kind of vilifying component of when you're going the route of Darth Vader. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness's line, "He's more machine than man," as if that's like that's a bad thing, you know. And we now live in a world where so many people have prosthetic limbs, and it's becoming more a part of our society, where as technology evolves, people who have maybe lost a limb or maybe need, it's not unreasonable to think that moving forward we will have that kind of technology, not to that advanced level perhaps, but becoming part of our day-to-day experience, day-to-day lives. And
Yes, I think it's
the
quite
idea of
interesting.
sorry, go on.
Sorry, John, go on. I was just going to say about Elon Musk. Is it the Neuralink that he's creating, where it's the chip in the brain that can help move prosthetic limbs, and it might help people who've got spinal injuries to walk again. And we are like technology is evolving into that space. So it's quite interesting that we're seeing that now.
And they were saying that how it is an interesting idea. I don't think that these particular characters are going to be I can't imagine are going to be that talked about as characters in Star Wars lore. But just the idea that in this universe, technology being combined with living people, living creatures or whatever, seems to be looked at as a bad thing. Or you're moving into that world of you're walking that line of that Darth Vader walked, and the bad guys are always the ones that seem to have the incorporation of technology into their physical selves. And I think it is a nice thing that this show is kind of saying that it can be the other way as well. That doesn't have to just be for evil people in this universe.
Yeah, I guess it leans that kind of leans on that. I don't know if it's a subgenre or a trope of the man versus machine, and it's good versus evil, and that is throughout like film and TV history. That is a thing that keeps coming up. So I think in what you're talking about, that sort of touches on that. Whether they're going to go all the way, Luke looking at his hand, worrying that he's getting evil kind of thing. Now he's got his robotic hand. I don't know whether they're going to go down that route with it, because it felt quite fun. They're like, oh, I've spent a lot of money on my eye, you can look at it, kind of thing. And it's like, they're trying to make it a fun thing, and it could be quite fun. I think those guys have got a little bit more fuel in the tank, as far as as far as the series is concerned. I hope they're not constantly about, but they could.
So I was going to say, before we wrap up, that car chase, or for lack of a better word, chase was really bad. I mean,
I didn't like it.
It was so slow and clunky, and I was like, I literally said as I was watching this, I am not watching The French Connection right now. I was like, you've got speeders. They're called, like, you've got like, these things don't have wheels. You've got wide open desert outside of these towns. I don't understand why we had to have this kind of. I know it was a chase through town, but why was it so slow?
It was such a like hackneyed type of chase as well. Yeah. It was almost like Back to the Future, where Biff skids into the manure at the end.
Yeah, it did. That's exactly it. That's the way to describe this. It was the way Marty McFly moves on his hoverboard.
Yes.
That's what this felt like. But these guys are in like big vehicles that should be able to move better.
Yes.
To me, it's just
a bit clunky.
It was very clunky, and it did throw me on that episode overall, I think. Anyway, any final thoughts, Brad?
I think we've probably covered everything. I mean, I'm really interested to see where it goes in the next couple of episodes. It's very open. They've left a lot of, obviously they've foretold us that things are going to happen, but there's so much space for things to happen around that sort of thread of invading Pikes. Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Brad, and thanks for listening. Make sure to check us out on thescriptdepartment.net for all the latest cool projects that we do. Follow us on social media, hit the links in the description, and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and subscribe to our podcast as well. Just search for The Script Department. Thanks for listening, guys.